But we were just living such different lives. And so what we were constantly an example to each other what we didn't want. And it was maddening, right? Because here's this person, we love each other, we care about each other, but...
So do you think that that's kind of what was going on maybe at the time or something like that with you know, the people we were dealing with during that launch or something?
Yeah, I do. I really do. Uh-huh. Yeah, because, well, and we can have these disconnects. They can come from anywhere, but these fundamental disconnects when we're, you know...
Wasn't it just something that we needed a countdown timer and we needed him to like install it or whatever?
Yeah, it was something along those lines. But I think it was relatively more intrinsic than that.
But
I think it was the equivalent of that, except it was important.
Yeah.
And even if it wasn't, I mean, that's what we were trying to do. I mean, it's a rough situation for him because he's getting humiliated in front of his colleagues. It's rough.
But the thing is what we just did is we were like, okay, so he's typically the guy we would rely on to do something like that. We don't have him now. It's 2 a.m. We need this thing now. What do we do? And so we just investigated, and I was like, Google, okay, I got the code, I figured it out, boom,
yeah,
it's done.
And what we did, what we ultimately had to do is kind of punt with him at the time, and be like, okay, you know, we had this plan for him, but we had to figure it out ourselves, just like what you're saying.
Yeah, we're like, we understand, go do your thing.
Yeah.
You know, we're going to take care of it.
And that was great management of vectors, because we realized, hey, he's on this vacation vector, and this is wrecking his life, you know, for good or for bad, because there's no point in, again, it's like what we said when Amazon took your money from the $8,000 deal. You'd be like, damn him, what's wrong with him? And be angry and running around. And I see this as a person who has been angry and run around and been furious and felt like the world was against me. And but what we did instead was we just stayed on our vector. You know, we had together a very clear vision of what it was that we were trying to do, and we discussed it. We discussed the philosophy. This is how this project is going to work out. This is how the customers are going to. Really, what we did was we talked about reverse engineering that customer experience, and how are we going to have this incredible experience for our customers where they're just going to be blown away and just kind of overwhelmed. And I'm proud of that you know, launch. We have, you know, the testimonials that we have from it are some of the best testimonials I've ever seen, and I'm proud of it. And that launch was about those vectors. So
maybe you should explain.
Yeah, I want to go a bit more into vectors and how they work. So the idea with a vector is, so first of all, the human mind is basically a copy machine, is one way of looking at it. The human brain is a bit of a copy machine in terms of how it makes decisions. It generally determines what people like it are doing. All right, so our mind, and this is a psychological thing, generally, this is the way that psychology works. This is the only way that the brain works. I'm not saying that this is all the human existence, but just in terms of the way our brain works. Not our consciousness, not our soul, nothing like that, but just our brain. And the way our brain sorts through things, and I see this with Chloe and Logan, with your children, so clear. They copy. You know, they copy, and that's how they learn. And
they copy it and then see what the feedback is, you mean?
Exactly. What the brain tries to do is tries to find somebody that's like it and copy them, right? So okay, here's a great example. I was watching we've been, in football a lot, watching football a lot. And, I was watching an interview with one of the New York Giants all-pro defensive ends, O.C. Umenyiora.
Yeah.
And he was from Africa, I believe, and had come over to America and was pretty athletic but didn't know anything about football. And it really boiled down to girls that he liked football. And that's why he got into football. Mm-hmm. And that was it. Like, that was all there was to it, that he saw these cheerleaders and it just blew him away. He's like, really? All right, well, I need to find out about that. And that's a great example of vectors. When I first got excited about the game Magic the Gathering, and that was a card game I played professionally for years and years and years, what happened was a guy who I thought of being just like me and my friend Jason Schaefer, was like, hey, I have a new game and it's the bomb. And we got together and he just played it in front of me and I just saw it and I was like, that's the bomb. Because he was just like me and he was having fun with it. And so I thought, hey, I can just do this. with the StomperNet launch is certainly one of the most glaring examples of vectors and how they work. What was so fascinating about that launch, I didn't talk about this. I need to make sure to mention it in Annihilation. It's so important. David Mills and I were just fascinated with SEO. Fascinated. And, we already had a business that was being very successful with eBay. And we were like, man, if we could be all over SEO, we could just do anything. If we could just be all over search engine optimization. And so when we were investigating the businesses, the folks that Brad and Andy had helped succeed, we were so excited by it. We were like, wow! It was just so interesting to us. And I think that really helped draw out the passion that those folks had for, in developing their own businesses and help them kind of appreciate it all the more while we were filming and shooting these videos and so forth.
You guys just were really into it.
We were so into it. I mean, and David, and a great example, David's wife, Oya, she wanted to build a jewelry website. And she was just so excited about the prospect of building a jewelry website and getting search engine, people off the search engines to her site. And so that was so much a part of our culture, so much part of the conditions of our life, was this genuine admiration for the skill of search engine optimization. And actually, David and I had a couple of, kind of up and down efforts before with AdSense and with, doing some techniques that I learned from Jeff Johnson and from John Reese about blogging and pinging and stuff like that from back in the day. And I made a few $1,000 with search engine optimization, but it wasn't like I wasn't ranking #1 for Magic or for anything like that. And so we had this genuine excitement when it came to investigating these businesses, and that interaction between guys that were passionate about investigating that business and then these folks who were passionate about their businesses, and plugging those two things together and then just letting folks witness it. I mean, that's really the main thing we want to do. I see as a parent, I mean, you're not doing all this technical stuff. You're just being happy in front of your kids. You're just leading the life that you lead in front of your kids. And it's so much more powerful than lecturing them all the time about, oh, you need to do this, you need to do that.
It's the old school do as I do, not as I say type of thing.
Yeah, because, what is the vector of what is the vector when we're lecturing someone? Like, implicitly, if I'm running around lecturing my kids, I'm implying that my kids should run around lecturing. I'm not implying that they should learn anything. I'm implying they should lecture. When I was teaching my niece, Mara, how to play Legos, and I thought about, how am I going to teach her? And at first, I imagined myself trying to explain things to her, and her eyes kind of glazing over, and just being like, what are you even talking about? And then it hit me. I just started playing.
You're just like building, and then she
was just boom, like a little sponge. She just couldn't get enough of it. And the only thing that distracted her, I actually have this on video. It's a cute little video on YouTube. She and I were playing with Legos and having so much fun. And what distracted her finally was I gave her little brother this big stuffed elephant. And when he opened his present, and he was the younger one. He's little Tyke Thomas. And so, of course, he's, the apple of everyone's eye. Yeah. So my mom came over and started taking pictures of Thomas on his little, he actually got on the elephant. It was really adorable. And then his mom and dad came over, my brother and my sister-in-law came over, and they were all paying all this attention. So suddenly, the focus shifted over. All the vectors in the room were suddenly on Thomas and the elephant. Lickety-split, Mara is on top of the elephant with Thomas, and they're riding. It was like seconds later. And
so, what do you think people at home can take out of vectors?
Well, the number one thing is be the change you want to see. That's the biggest thing.
So, what specific examples can they do to do that?
That's a great question.
Because I've heard that phrase a lot, and I never understood it back in the day. Because I think that's a famous quote, right?
It is
by like Gandhi or something like that.
Oh, was it? I don't know who it was from. Yeah, that's dope. Yeah. More respect to Gandhi for that. Well, I appreciate you putting it that way. So, what we want to do is we want to. The link checking is a great example,
especially like in creating a business. And
exactly in creating a business, we want to have we want to have what we want to have. So we want to imagine what we want to have and go for that. And there's going to be all these distractions in our life that are not that, right? So if Mara wanted to do Legos, she needs to be around people who want to do Legos.
So say there's this guy right now at home, he's like 30.
Yeah.
And he has like a 9 to 5. He's not that stoked about it. His wife has her 9 to 5. They're struggling on money, and they kind of like gripe at each other when they get home from work, and things aren't that great. They have like kids, and it's kind of like, you know, they have to deal with them and like balance everything. It's just like a frustrating kind of like life. You know, what kind of things could they do, you know, to understand this and like...
Yeah, that's a great question.
Things like that.
Okay, so the first thought is always going to be to get somebody else to do something, okay? So with Mara, like with teaching Mara to play Legos, the first thing I'm going to think of is telling her to play Legos. The first thing I'm going to think of with my wife, and I did this, I made this mistake with Valerie, was telling her and lecturing her about how I was doing the right thing. And rather than just doing it in front of her and enjoying myself and trying to draw her in that way. And that was the chance that we had. Mm-hmm. And I didn't take advantage of it. I didn't know. Instead, I would argue with her. And that just literally caused more problems rather than just enjoying myself. You know, I notice with children it's so funny because they can be so ephemeral. I think Chloe's so adorable, your daughter Chloe. And the automatic way to get Chloe to play with you is just to sit down and just enjoy something. And she'll just be right on top of you.
Yeah, you're right.
Max, the dog, was just in here for this video. And
it wasn't because we said come over here.
No, we were like, Maxie, please, come over. You know, we weren't chasing him all over the place. We were just enjoying something that he could see for himself. I had a scenario. I walked past when Valerie and I were living in Alexandria, and I was first getting into internet marketing and really starting to understand it. I walked past this little playground where these 3 kids were playing. And to me, this is now a famous example. But anyway, 3 kids were playing. They're all little tots. And it was a little boy, a little girl, and a second little boy. And at the beginning, it was just the little boy and the little girl were playing independently. The little girl had a bouncing ball, and she was just bouncing it. And the little boy was playing this nonsense game where he was holding a rail fence in his 2 hands, and he was passing his face and his knee in between the fence. So that's it. That was the full game. He's like, good, to his own little rhythm. And the little girl's just bouncing the ball. And a second little boy comes walking down the path, and this all happened in a couple seconds. He walks down the path and he sees the little girl, and he looks down at his hand. I imagine saying to himself, do I have a ball in my hand? You know, like that, almost so elementary.
Right.
And then he just drops his hand, walks over to the fence, and starts going like this, just like the other little boy. Mm-hmm. And I was like, there it is. There it is. You know, he said to himself, well, that looks interesting. Is she like me? Nope. Well, that looks interesting. Is he like me? Yep. Yay, I'm happy.
Yeah.
In business, passion is really going to drive us. You know, and this, of course, we're talking. You know, we started talking about curiosity, and I want to talk about the skill of curiosity in this video as well, because that's the vector we want to be on.
As specific as possible for like the guy I gave it, like as the example, like what does he do? You know?
Yeah, definitely.
I know you're getting there.
I am. So what he wants to do is, so what is he going to show her, right? So if we say, what is he going to show her, or his wife and his kids?
And if there's negative stuff coming at him, what does he do about it? Mm-hmm. You know, and if he, is like, just meets a lot of negativity as far as like products that don't work, or, the wife that's not exactly thrilled with what he's doing late nights instead of watching TV with her, or whatever.
That's great. That's a great question. And that actually specifically came up for me. I actually felt like you were talking about me except for the kids. Okay. So the first thing that we need to do is take care of ourselves. And I'm hopefully I'm implying that in the first place. It really is going to start with getting our own head straight and presenting the right vectors to ourselves with our own actions. So for instance, we have to start generally getting optional things out of our life that aren't going in the right direction. So for instance, if I have a bowling night then it may be worth it to pause that for a while, to put that on pause. If I have kind of especially, like let's imagine that I talk with somebody on the phone all the time, and that conversation is just not working, then I want to kind of generally cut that off. If they're one of the biggest things is folks that are negative around us, we want to try to present them with a positive outlook, but we have to be willing to also take a stand. Okay. So let's do things one at a time. So he's that guy, and he says one day it dawns on him. Okay, vectors. All right, I want to get my vectors straight, and I don't want things to be crazy. So what vector do I want to be on? Right. So what example, what change am I being that I want to see? And what he wants to do is he wants to be curious, and we've said that the culture of curiosity. How does he get there? Right.
He wants to be curious about how to make money online.
Exactly,
right?
about how to make money online, and really curious, right? Just like I wanted to be curious about Legos in front of Mara, and that's really what excited her was, that curiosity that I had, and that my mind was involved in the building and the construction of it. So what he wants to do is start embracing his own curiosity, and curiosity and passion have kind of a special feedback loop of their own. They kind of play upon each other, and so whenever he's not feeling curious, then he can try to feel passionate. Whenever he's not feeling passionate, he can try to feel curious. And these are ways to kind of spark things. Whenever we're taking on something, we always want to try to take a couple of angles on things. What I mean is, with relaxation is a great example. There's a number of different ways that we can relax. We can listen to relaxing music. We can get a massage. We can just think relaxing thoughts. But these things are very different. Getting a massage and thinking relaxing thoughts are two very, very different things. One's philosophical and one's physical. But they both work. And they both, and getting a relaxing massage while thinking good thoughts is way better. So we want to be able to kind of take two angles on things. We've got some minds to change here. Okay? This 30-year-old guy, he's got some minds to change. He's got to start with his own. We always want to start by changing other people's minds by default. And it's a huge mistake. It's all over our culture that we should be lecturing each other and bossing each other around and having a bunch of negative expectations of each other is one of the biggest things. And, we talked about with birthdays. I used to be a monster on my birthday. It was rough for me. I'd be like, I'm alone, I'm getting older, or do people love me enough, or where's my party, or whatever it was.
I told you I got in big trouble with a girlfriend on her birthday because I had planned. Her birthday fell on a Thursday, and I had planned Friday through Sunday, a huge weekend away, and we did that. But she had an expectation that Thursday was the one that really meant something because it was her actual birthday.
Yeah.
So in her eyes, I blew it big time.
Yeah.
For the 3-day weekend of this extravagant trip, everything didn't mean very much at all because the Thursday was the day.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that. I mean, I knew it was her birthday, but I thought,
and then it was game over. I mean, it was really rough after that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the negative expectation right there.
It's just huge. So how do we begin? And when I say we want to take two approaches, well, what we want to realize is that whenever we want to change somebody's mind, that there's two minds that can change, right? My mind can change and their mind can change. And we want to constantly be implying that our mind can change, right? We want to let folks know, hey, I'm currently really passionate about this project and it's really blowing me away. And, before I wasn't passionate about it. I didn't realize the possibility of internet marketing and what could be done. In fact, I thought it was a big scam. But then, as I delved in, I was surprised. I started kind of peeling back the layers and checking out a couple sites and, checking out a couple posts. And I found this one guy who had a business, selling, fishing lures, but he was doing it in this really nifty way where, he had all these customers that were so successful and they would, show